Welcome in, Whiskey Freaks. I got another epic guest on the show today, and this is going to be special. We're going to talk about, you guessed it, whiskey. And we might just learn something while we're at it. In fact, I promise we're going to walk away today with a better understanding of the whiskey world, how it runs, who's in it, and who's out there really getting after it. And y'all know me, I feel pretty damn compelled to shine a light on the new kids on the block, some of the smaller cats that are out there, the brands that are out there doing it right, and especially the ones bringing back family legacies that actually mean something in the whiskey world. Today's guest, he is no exception to that rule, and he's doing exactly that. Let's give a warm blind tasting podcast welcome to Mr. Bill McBrayer, founder and president of McBrayer Legacy Spirits. Bill, welcome in, man. Super stoked to have you on the podcast today, taking some time to introduce me and my listeners to a relatively new but yet old brand.
Yeah, well, John, thanks. It's an absolute pleasure to be on today. Thank you.
Well, before I get ahead of myself, I can tend to do that. I want to first raise a glass, and what I have in my glass here is some of McBrayer's finest bourbon. This is called The Judge. I've got the beautiful box here, an amazing presentation here. I've got my bottle here as well. And I just want to let you know I'm going to be sipping on this during the discussion as we talk today. It's just something I do during most of my podcast.
Well, that's a good one.
I know it's not 5 o'clock here in Illinois or in Ohio. You're in Cincinnati?
Yeah. Well, that's okay. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yes, sir. Well, as always, guys, I just want to mention I paid for this whiskey. I'm glad I did. And I'm going to get all the deets on this particular whiskey and the other offerings from McBrayer in just a few minutes. But I think we probably should start at the beginning, right? I want to ask you, Bill, from what I understand, your story is about as unique as any whiskey story that's out there. And it dates back, over 175 years. So
yeah,
give us just a little bit of the background here. How exactly did McBrayer come about?
Sure. Well, I'm a ninth generation McBrayer. We were from Scotland, came over in the 1760s, settled around Pennsylvania. Three brothers came over from Dumfries, Scotland, through Northern Ireland, settled in Pennsylvania, around the Cumberland Gap there, and then they fought in the Revolutionary War. And then one of the brothers was a surveyor and came over to the James Herod settlement in Kentucky. Oh, and one of the first settlers in Kentucky went back and got his family, and they were granted a couple thousand acres for their service in the war. And they made whiskey, right? And so the third generation, they finally established this distillery there in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky in 1847. And that was established by W.H. McBrayer, the judge, there in Lawrenceburg. And so he was the first judge in Anderson County. Thus, that moniker followed him the rest of his life.
Gotcha.
He was a state senator, and he had this little distillery that he set up. And then he started to give it more attention in the 1860s around the Civil War and later on in the 1860s after the war. And he actually took his whiskey to Vienna, Austria in 1873 to the World Trade Fair. And he won the best whiskey in the world. And they said he turned the crown of heads in Europe from Scotch to Kentucky whiskey. And really, he was known for a lot of things, but he really put Kentucky whiskey or bourbon on the international map in the 1870s. So that's kind of the history of how it got started. And, if you follow the history as much as I do now, right, they were making some of the best whiskey in Kentucky around Anderson County around the Civil War era. And he influenced all those brands and influenced a lot of the names that we know of today in the whiskey world. And it was kind of a big deal. And so, the brand survived for a long time and made it through Prohibition, although the family didn't own it. The National Distillers later owned it. And then when they sold to Jim Beam in the 1980s, so the brands went from the 1840s to the 1980s. And his cousin was in it. We have three different labels. But when Jim Beam owned the brands in the 1980s, when bourbon was in the downturns, they let the McBrayer trademarks expire.
Okay.
And so I learned that story about 14 years ago, got absolutely obsessed with our history. And as a McBrayer, I didn't really understand how influential we were in the whiskey world and got obsessed with it and made this my hobby. And now it's a pretty substantial hobby, but it's still a hobby. And we've been bringing back the brands now for 5 years. I guess we've been releasing product, and it's been just an absolute crazy journey to say the least.
Well, they say the judge, and you even mentioned it yourself, he was a special person and a big name to be sure, especially in Lawrenceburg, and I guess even in the region.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what it turns out he was somebody who actually helped really shape and support the early whiskey world, both again there in Lawrenceburg and beyond, like you said, at the 1873 with World Exposition, I guess it was.
Yeah, the World Trade Fair. Yeah.
Can you give
Um,
us an idea of some of the things he did to support the growth of that community there in Lawrenceburg back in the day, or even the whiskey world?
yeah. So, sheesh, his story is very long. Like, so I'll try to.
Well,
I mean, he ran them. So he took over the merchant store with his brothers from his sister's deceased husband when they were in their early 20s. Right. He bought out his brothers. So he ran a merchant store there in Lawrenceburg. Um, most of his life, really. He was really he became a state senator. He was very devout Methodist, or I'm sorry, he was a very devout Presbyterian. The Scottish were a lot of
okay.
Presbyterians, and built the church there in town. And raised cattle, had an orchard farm,
Wow.
and then and like I said, his whiskey became world renowned. And so around 1860, a guy by the name of T.B. Rippey worked for him, and
Okay.
he helped him buy his first distillery.
Sounds
T.B.
familiar.
Rippey, right? And that's now called Wild Turkey, right? Um, right. So T.B. Rippey worked for him.
Right across the road in Lawrenceburg, right?
Yeah, right across the road from Lawrenceburg. He had a master distiller for over 25 years. His name was W.B. Saffel. And then he helped him build his first distillery in the 1880s or so. And that's a brand that's still today that's actually also owned by Campari, W.B. Saffel.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
he adopted his nephew, his sister's son. He was orphaned. His mom and dad both passed away when he was 6. He adopted him, raised him as a son, gave him the money and land for his distillery for his wedding present. His name was C.M. Dedman, and his brand was Kentucky Owl.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
right. His cousin John McBrayer started. He had several distilleries he was part of, but he bought a distillery in New Market, Kentucky. It was DSP 17. He renamed it the Old McBrayer Distillery.
Okay.
William Harrison, he later bought it. He sold it to his distributor eventually because he was helping with these other 3 distilleries, right, between Kentucky Owl and Saffel and his Cedar Brook distillery, right? His brand was Cedar Brook.
Okay.
That was the most famous brand out there.
Okay. That'll come into play
And,
here soon.
right, and Cedar Brook, and he later sold it to his distributor. His distributor, long story short, ended up selling it at one point to E.H. Taylor. So
Oh,
E.H. Taylor he was a huge fan of the McBrayers. So, E.H. Taylor, he started in 1870. So if you can really start to put that together, we think
sure.
that's a long time ago, but that was actually a full generation almost after William Harrison
Right.
established our distillery, right? And so when he first started, he was buying 2 products in town. He was buying Old Crow and he was buying McBrayer Cedar Brook because they were known as the best in Kentucky. And you're drinking the Judge product there today.
Right.
So so when I started getting into all this history and I started learning all about it, um, we actually have some family historians in the McBrayer family. So we've been studying our genealogy for multiple
Oh,
generations,
that's awesome.
and we have a genealogy book that's sitting over there. It's about that thick from the 1980s with just the McBrayers in this country. And one of the McBrayer historians was in Detroit, which I'm in Cincinnati. So I called him up, went up to see him, and told him I was getting obsessed with our bourbon story and wanted to bring back our brands. And he said, "Are you going to use the family mash bill?" And I go, what are you talking about? The family mash bill. And he said, well, there's a family mash bill out there. I don't know where it's at, but I know there's one. And so I went on this quest to find the family mash bill. And so, when I'm doing my research, I'm on Google, right? And I'm probably on page, I don't know, 1,000 or something. And there was an old blog post called Bourbon Enthusiast, and it had Michael Veach and Chuck Crowdery on this blog post, who are in
Okay.
the Bourbon
Yeah.
Hall of Fame, right, as
Mm-hmm.
historians.
Yep.
And Michael Veach was going through the Taylor Hayes files at the Filson Society in Louisville. And in his files was a letter from William Harrison McBrayer to
Holy
E.H. Taylor.
cats.
And on this letter, it talked about McBrayer having to pay some taxes, and he wanted E.H. to buy these barrels from him. And on the back of the letter had the mash bill he was using at the time. And so I'm like, all right, we're going to make that product, right? And it was an 88% corn mash bill.
Okay.
And so when these guys were talking about it on this post, they said, well, somebody really needs to remake this. I'm sure it had a lot, like really grain forward type of stuff, and go in the barrel at 105 proof like they did in the old days. I'm like, well, I don't know anything about making bourbon, but we're going to make that, right?
Right.
And so I took that letter and I took that blog post back in 2016 down to Pat and Shane at Wilderness Trail, and we had some heirloom corn. Yeah, we had some heirloom corn grown down there, and we went in the barrel at 105 proof, and that is what you're drinking today as our WH product.
Okay.
So when we laid down 10 barrels, and so I think you're in batch 5 there. That's barrel strength at 106.
Yeah.
So that came out of the barrel just like that.
Well,
and we wanted to do something to honor William Harrison McBrayer and bring him back to the bourbon community and tell his story. And we couldn't think of a better way to do it than to try to recreate one of his old mash bills.
Well, in that vein of old McBrayer, your bourbon obviously being one of the most sought after whiskeys of its time and beyond. One of the most coolest things that I've heard about the old McBrayer brand is involving Hollywood. Am I right?
Yeah. So I call that our movie bourbon, right? So I don't know if you have any pictures of it that we can put up. I don't have any right here, but if you go to our blogs, our website, I have some blog stories on there. So Old McBrayer was a featured whiskey in the movie Untouchables with Kevin Costner and Sean Connery. And when they break into the post office and they're raiding all the whiskey, it's all Old McBrayer stuff. And it's also pretty prevalent in Deadwood, the movie Deadwood. They're drinking it. And then there's some smaller roles that played. It was also in Far and Away with Tom Cruise when he's fighting.
Really?
People.
I didn't know that one.
Yeah, he's fighting people, and they said he says, I'll fight anybody you put in front of me. And he's got his hands up. He's drinking Old McBrayer whiskey. Okay. Right? And so I'm like, when I drink Old McBrayer, I get good whiskey muscles, And so and so there's a lot of thoughts behind that. I think there's 2 reasons why that happened. I have a picture from the Chicago History Museum of a Prohibition warehouse that had Old McBrayer, old granddad in the picture. And I think, when they did Untouchables, Old McBrayer was a defunct brand at the time, so they didn't have to pay anybody.
Right.
So I think that might have been some of it.
Might have come into play.
It could have. Now, my mom, my mom is in her 70s and she thought Sean Connery was like the hottest guy ever. And so she said, well, maybe because Sean Connery was Scottish and McBrayer is a Scottish name, he requested it. I go, maybe, can't ask him anymore, but, it's really cool to see it portrayed, but it was actually a very accurate portrayal, right? So, and sometimes when you watch Deadwood, you'll see Bullet bourbon. Well, we know they didn't make Bullet bourbon back in those days, but they did make Old McBrayer, right? The Old McBrayer brand was actually started in 1870. So John McBrayer established that brand in 1870, and that one, that was kind of like the brand I heard of, when I was growing up. Dad was a sales guy in the 70s and the 80s. And he told me when I was a little guy, he'd tell me, he said, I went and got some Old McBrayer whiskey for my customers and gave it to them at Christmas time. And he said, the next time I saw him, he said, hey, Bill, thanks for that whiskey. But, nobody will drink it. This is really bad stuff. And
Oh,
can you don't give us any more of that. So what I had always heard was Old McBrayer was just rock gut whiskey from the 70s and 80s. And I have some pictures and I have some old bottles and they're full still because nobody would drink it. And you look on the back of the bottle and it was 75% neutral grain spirits,
oh
right?
my God. I
And
was going to
so
say, have you cracked them open and tried it? But I doubt you're going to crack it open and try it if it's 75%
yeah,
neutral.
but now I've got a bottle up there on my bar there, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
bottle from during Prohibition or right after Prohibition. It was
Okay.
bottled by the American Medicinal Spirits Company, and it was 17-year-old whiskey. And I can tell you, we have opened some of those,
Okay.
and it's some remarkably great whiskey.
Okay.
And so and so what happened is you know when my daughter was looking to go to college back in 2000 and probably 12 or something, um, you know, we were checking out the school in Danville, Kentucky called Center College.
Yep.
And I told her about it and she's like, I don't know. It's down there in Kentucky. I don't know that I want to go there. And I was telling my dad about it. I said, hey, this looks like a really nice little good Christian school to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, the McBrayers gave some money to that school. And I go, who are you talking about? He said it was the McBrayer in the whiskey business. And I go, really? So, I'm just looking for the McBrayer scholarship at Center College. Because if
Right,
there's a
right, right,
scholarship,
right.
my kid, she's going to apply to go to school there. I don't care what she says. Right. And there wasn't one. And so I happened to be home that weekend by myself. And I Googled McBrayer whiskey. And there was a blog post by Jack Sullivan on prepro.com.
Yeah.
And it was W.H. McBrayer, the judge of good whiskey. And I read this blog story that he wrote and about how he did all these things. There was family lawsuits and all that stuff, and how he was a judge and so influential in the bourbon world. I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so then I just kept. I don't think I worked for like 6 weeks. I was just doing more and more research and Google and stuff, and then realized that the brands had trademarks had been let go by Jim Beam. And so I went down this other journey of just wanting to own the trademarks
Right.
of the McBrayer whiskey.
Yeah. How does that work? I mean, was that a complicated I mean, I can imagine the government, so it probably was complicated, was it not?
Well, it's not supposed to be, but it was.
Okay.
And so what happened is I got an attorney, and the brands were Cedar Brook and Old McBrayer, but Cedar Brook had started as the W.H. McBrayer distillery. So he named it W.H. McBrayer at the urging of his wife. He wanted to change the name to Cedar Brook because they wanted to start to distance the name. He was, like I said, devout Presbyterian.
Sure.
The temperance movement had started even earlier than when it happened. It took several decades for that to happen.
Yeah.
And so I started with those two. Well, there's a wine called Cedar Brook. So
Ah,
Cedar Brook originally got denied. So then I said, well, can I use W.H. McBrayer? They said, yes. And then I said, okay, well, what about Old McBrayer? They said, well, Old McBrayer just got contested. There's somebody challenging you getting that trademark. And I'm like, well, who's that? They said it was the Scotch Whisky Association. I said, well, what's their argument? It's already been made here in this country. And they said, well, um, McBrayer is a Scottish name. If you put McBrayer whiskey on a bottle, you're going to mislead the public. It's from Scotland and not from the United States. I said, well, you tell those guys to pound it. And I might not even said it that nice. And they said, well, Mr. McBrayer, you'll probably win the case, but it's going to cost you $25,000 to defend it at least. They have a lot of money. And they're doing this to a lot of bourbon people because
okay.
they know bourbon's coming back. And again, this is 2012,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so we ended up settling it because I just wanted to own the brands at this point. And so we said it had to be called a bourbon or made in the United States. I'm like, no problem. We'll settle that. So it was great. So I had the Old McBrayer trademark and W.H. McBrayer trademark. And I'm like, all right, this is kind of cool. And then 6 months later, this attorney, she sends me another bill. And I go, I thought I had the trademarks. What's this all about? She said, well, have you used them? You can't have a trademark without using it. I'm like,
Oh my God.
no. So
Whoa.
I said, can I put McBrayer bourbon on a t-shirt? She said, no, you said you're going to have bourbon. I'm like, oh, well, how long do I have to do this for? She says, well, every 6 months I have to extend it. It's going to cost you $500 every
Oh
six
my God.
months. And you got 3 to 5 years, and I'm like, all right, fine. I'll figure it out. Just keep extending them.
Didn't
Right. And
realize
I
what you
told,
were getting into here.
Oh no, it keeps going, right? This whole journey keeps going. And um, so then, I don't know. I started going down this path, right? And I told my dad, I said, "Hey, Dad, hurry up and retire. We got to figure out how to make some whiskey, right? I gotta make whiskey." And so I went to a still show with him. I think it was around 2014 or so, and it was a little craft still show. And they said these distillers were like, "Yeah, we're $250,000 into our still before we ever started making whiskey." And I'm like, "Oh shit, this is not
Oh,
going to be that
crap.
easy." And so then, I was like, all right, I got to figure this out. So then, at some point along the way, I told my wife, I was sitting in my chair and she walks in the door and I said, well, it looks like I'm getting in the whiskey business. And she goes, really? And I go, yeah, I don't know anything about it. So I'm just going to drink a bunch of it and figure it out.
How'd
And
that go? How'd that go?
yeah, yeah. So, so after dinner, I had teenage kids at the time and, there's a lot of reasons to drink whiskey when you have teenage kids. And after dinner, I'd go grab a drink or something. And she said, "You're having a drink tonight? It's like Monday." I go, "Honey, I am working. This is product research,
That's
right?
right.
And
That's right.
so leave me alone, right?
That's
I'm
right.
working."
Doing it for
And
the
so
family.
this is for the family. And so then, like I said, I found this letter, I did all this research, found this letter, took it to Pat and Shane. And we made 10. I said, "Hey, I need one barrel, Pat. Can you just make me one barrel? Cause I just need it for my trademarks." And they said, "No, we can't do that." And he said, that's not cost effective. So we have this 18-inch column still. We'll run you one run through there. We don't normally do that for people, but we know who McBrayer is. This is kind of a big deal. I'm like,
Wow.
well, that's cool. So they ran me 10 barrels of my first 10 barrels, right? This is December of 2016.
Okay.
I have 1 year left or I'm going to lose my trademarks, right? So I called the attorney. I said, "We made some whiskey. Are we good?" And she said, "Well, did you sell any of it?" I go, "No, we just made it." And she said, "Well, you have to sell it in order to put it in use to have a trademark." I'm like, "Well, shit, how do you do that?" Right. So then we had to get a federal license and then I had to get a state license. And
Oh, good
I'm
Lord.
in I'm in Ohio. So I called the state of Ohio and said, "Hey, I've got this product. I need to sell 50 bottles of it to my friends and family." And they said,
Yeah.
"Do you understand we're a controlled state? We don't do that." And I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh."
man.
And they said, "Well, what do I do?" They said, "Well, call Kentucky. They do all kinds of stuff in Kentucky." And so I called Kentucky. They said, "Hey, no problem. We'll give you an out-of-state distiller's license. We just need your state license from Ohio." He wouldn't give me a license because And so, long story short, I bottled that stuff at 1 year and 1 day. So it becomes Kentucky bourbon when it's been aged in Kentucky for 1 year and 1 day. It comes straight bourbon in 2 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so then we're bottling this stuff. It's not supposed to be any good. It's 1 year old bourbon, right? And this guy came by. His name was Kevin Curtis. He used to be a master distiller at Woodford. He was doing
Okay.
some work, and Dad and I we're drinking it and we're trying it while we're bottling it, and we're like, kind of think it tastes pretty good.
For
Doesn't
a
this
year
taste
old,
good to you?
right?
We're 1 year old stuff. And
Yeah.
and this guy came by and he said, I said, "Would you try this?" And he kind of took this glass, and he smelled it, kind of looked at us, "What'd you do to this?" And I go, "Nothing, man. We took it right out of that barrel and we're putting it in the bottle." He said, "Well, how are you filtering it?" We said, "We're just using some cheesecloth to take out the charcoal," right? He didn't believe us. And he came back and goes, "Guys, this is some of the best 1 year old bourbon I've ever had." And we're like, "All right." So then that second year we got 12 barrels made. And then the third year I said, "Hey, Dad, we got some good stuff here. Let's make 24 barrels. Right." And then the next year we made 36 barrels. And I sold my 50 bottles of 1 year old stuff. But we were waiting until it got to be 4 years old. And I got my trademark, right? I had like 1 month left or I was going to lose them. And so we got all that. So getting the trademarks, it's easy, but it wasn't easy, especially with alcohol. And so then we made 30 something barrels the next year, and then we released what we call batch one of the Judge. So you're on batch five now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
batch one was 1,075 bottles. It was 5 of our first 10 barrels.
Okay.
We have a legacy club on our website. And so you sign up for our legacy club. We send you newsletters every month or so, can kind of let you know what we're doing. And we had a retailer in DC that shipped it for us to,
Okay.
40 some states. And so we released it to our legacy club. Legacy club is a lot of McBrayers from around the country. and we sold out in 3 days. And
Nice.
those are some unicorn bottles that are out there. And all these guys loved it, and it was great. And then I was like, well, this is a really cool business. This would be a great hobby to retire to, right? So then I went on this path. Bourbon started going like this, right? So I started laying down a few hundred barrels at a time, and then I sourced some bourbon for the old McBrayer product. And so then we sourced some things, and then we were laying some barrels down, and then the whole world changed, right? With trying to get production and contract production, and then it just got a little bit silly, and then. But now we're wonderful people if we're buying any new make right now. So that's been a pretty interesting journey over the last what 5 or 6 years,
Well,
you
I
know.
think, at least for me and the people that listen to my podcast, that the story, especially a legitimate, real story, is something
Mhm.
we want to hear, right? There's enough bullshit out there, and I don't do bullshit here. So this is amazing to hear. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, we're going to learn that kind of some of the inner workings that go on here. I don't know what the hell you have to deal with when start to finish, and you've started at the very beginning,
Yeah,
and you've made it, a success now. So I
thank you.
appreciate that. I absolutely love that you were able to share that with me. Before I get any further, and I'm going to jump right to you telling me a little bit about what you're offering. I know I mentioned I've got the Judge here with me
Mhm.
today.
Yeah,
I also have some other sample bottles here that my buddy Jared hooked me up with. I've got the Cedar Brook Weeded. I've got the Old McBrayer 8 bottled in bond. And then, of course, I have the Judge Batch 5. If you don't mind, tell the folks a little bit about that Cedar Brook Weeded.
yeah. Let me grab the bottle. I got it right here
Okay,
behind me,
great.
and I'll grab another couple here. So these are almost empty, which is always a
It's a
good
good
thing.
sign.
So this is our Cedar Brook bottle. So this is what we have our three standard products, right? So we have our Cedar Brook at 100 proof,
Hmm.
and then we have an old McBrayer bottled in bond, which is a mimic of those old bottles that you've seen in the movies and things like that. And then we have our WH product, which you had there. That comes in our black bottle and in box. So that's this one,
Hmm.
right? And then the Cedar Brook and the Old McBrayer we also offer as a single barrel on our website. So we have a red label and a blue label of those products here.
Okay.
So that's the Cedar Brook as a single barrel, and this is the Old McBrayer as a single barrel.
Nice.
And so like I said, three brands, three different unique products. So if you're going to go into the Cedar Brook product next, that
Hmm.
is our weeded product. Um, so as we had talked about, Cedar Brook was considered one of the most famous brands in the world. And I've got some old bottles there on top. I can, pull down. We tried to mimic some of the old bottles if I can reach them. All right, sorry, I didn't pull these down sooner. Um, so this one was a single barrel that they did of Cedar Brook. So if you can see, we used the old font of Cedar Brook that was used on that bottle,
Nice. Nice.
right? We tried to match that up on this bottle, but this was like the famous bottle, and this one's about gone. And here on the bottom of the bottle, it says the best known brand in the world. And it's hard to see. But he had his barrel head there, and he had the scroll around that at the top, and that was very symbolic of the Cedar Brook bottles. And we tried to keep that same style here. So we
Nicely
tried
done.
to you know honor our past with that brand. And again, so this was our third trademark. So we talked about our trademarks a little bit.
Hmm.
I was able to get the Cedar Brook trademark. So it took several attempts, and I guess you would call it levels of going through the trademark attorneys, that we were able to trademark W.H. McBrayer Cedar Brook Bourbon, excluding wine, and and that's how we got this one. So we'd already had the other two products out, and we wanted to make it different, so we made this our weeded product. And I figured if weeded was good enough for Pappy Van Winkle and Old Fitzgerald, I think it's fine for Cedar Brook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how we got to the Cedar Brook product.
And then that 8-year bottled in bond.
Yeah, so this is our traditional bourbon, I would call it. And Old McBrayer was a you know, it was known as a favorite of Old Kentucky. So some of our old ads from the 40s and 50s
Mm-hmm.
called
Mm-hmm.
it Old Kentucky, which I find that to be interesting. That's actually an area of Kentucky that used to be part of Bourbon County before they split it up into the counties.
Okay.
And you know, you talk about Old Kentucky, and this one has the state seal on it, if you can see it. And then we were able to. This is the same style of a label, but I changed it up when I added the age statement and I put a favorite of Old Kentucky on it. We were able to re-trademark that as well. And so that's a 70, 1812 rye mash
Okay.
bill.
Okay.
70 corn, 1812, 18 rye, 12% barley. And just a solid traditional Kentucky bourbon. And you know, when we started that one, it was a 4-year-old product, and now we were able to get to an 8-year bottled and bond, and every year it just kept getting a little bit better. And I really like it as an 8-year-old stated product. If I can continue to have enough barrels to make that our standard
Okay.
bottled and bond
Okay.
product, is the goal with that. And that's a $65 bottle on our website for an 8-year-old
That's
product. So I
very
mean, it's less
reasonable.
than yeah, it's less than 10 years per year.
Yeah.
Smaller brand. We've put that against Wild Turkey's 8. We put it against some of the other 8 years old out there. I mean, we like it better, but I can tell you it holds up with them just well, right? Just well. So I think if you're into bottled and bond products, it'd be great for people to try that one.
And then we got the judge.
So the judge, as I've mentioned, it came from that mash bill. This is a unique product to us. This is
88. It was 88 corn. What were the other
yeah, 6% barley, 6% rye. There's actually
okay.
some percentages in there. It's like, I don't know, 88 point, I think it's 4 and or 2 and 6 and 6,
Uh-huh.
5.6, 5.6, something like that. And so we call this our flagship, right? It comes in the box, has a little
Yeah,
story on the inside of the box there that talks about McBrayer. Um,
yeah,
yeah. And
absolutely amazing.
those are serial numbered bottles. So this particular batch had 2,750, I believe, on that. So we serial number them. And that's completely unique to us, right? There is nobody that makes this with that heirloom. Bloody Butcher corn is what we use in that, which
Okay.
we don't tell most people that until
Okay.
after they drink it. um, but it gives it that nice, I would say there's a butter note almost to it, right? And a nuttiness to that grain. And you know, we really we would call that our flagship. I would say, right? That's our flagship.
Yeah, I think
But
I paid $100 for this, and
yeah,
I don't want to give away my review because I'm going to be doing my review here in a week or two.
okay.
I will say I think people are going to want to tune into that. But $100 for the judge, I will say it was. I was happy to pay
Oh, thank you.
that.
Good. Well, the presentation really, you know, it's part of the whole deal,
It's
right?
special.
It is special. It's unique. It's not a lot of people are going to have it on their bar,
Yeah,
and I hope you like it. It sounds like you
yeah.
do.
Well, you do you have? Yeah, I don't know. Before we jumped on here, did you say you had something coming down the pike, or
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. So what we've been doing is, you know, the McBrayer family, right? We have fought in every war in this country's history.
okay?
And we really are taking our 250th anniversary of this country very serious. We are, you know, Scottish roots, American spirits, right? We came to this country, had the entrepreneurial journey, the whole grit you go through Kentucky and get things started. So we wanted to put together a commemorative bottle for the 17, you know, 250th, which a lot of people are doing.
Sure.
And so we made this a red, white, and blue label.
Oh,
It's the
wow.
W.H. McBrayer mash bill. We wanted to really lean into our fruit notes on this, like the apple notes and some of the pear notes that you might get, where we get a lot more of the butterscotch notes and some of the other that
Ooh,
we've done in batch
ooh.
4 and batch 5 of WH. So, you know, one that you're having has maybe some more butter and cinnamon notes to it. But this one is really fruit forward, same mash bill, We're only going to release 1,776 bottles.
So it's the
They're all
same
going to
mash
be
bill as the judge?
as the judge.
Okay. All right. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, same mash. It is the judge mash bill, same thing.
Okay.
And each of those batches have a little uniqueness to them. We blend the batches based on the barrels as they're getting older.
Okay.
And this one's really special. It's really special to us.
Love
My
that.
wife actually came up with the idea to do it, and I was a little bit hesitant at first. And we made the box unique as well. It's got the gold foil stamps to it.
Nice.
And you know, we're going to release that through our Legacy Club on June 5th, Friday, June 5th.
Okay.
You know, we should sell quite a few of them pretty fast. So
And how many are you going to release?
Just 1,776.
Oh, okay. There you go. Of course, right?
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Now, we've had some people say, I want the bottle number 1776. I think we're going to have to hold that one back, and maybe the 250th bottle. And I always get bottle number 1, and my dad gets bottle number 2, and a couple family members, right? But
that's awesome.
I tell you, this was our sample bottle. I just picked it up Thursday. And so, as you can see, I opened that yesterday. So we're pretty excited about it.
I think that's really about our time, Bill. Before we wrap it up, I do want to tell you thank you. It's amazing that you were able to carve out some time for me. And
of course,
really appreciate you. I love putting the spotlight on McBrayer and learning, again, the history part. And if people listen to my podcast, they know the history is so important to me, and this is real legit history. Is there anything else you'd like to say or add? You want to talk about your social media, your website, any of that good stuff?
Yeah, so our website is McBrayerLegacySpirits.com, and same with Instagram and Facebook is really where we're at. You can reach me personally on the contact me page on the website. Everything comes to me if you want to reach out to me directly. There's an ordering site for shipping through Bourbon Direct on our website under the spirits page. We can ship to most states, and then we also have a pickup location there in Northern Kentucky.
Well, I have finished my pour of the judge, so I've got to pour some more.
Great.
Really enjoyed sitting with you, sipping with you, learning about what you've done and your experience. I think for me, that's important too, to learn what you guys are going through out there while you're building this thing. Again, thanks for coming on today. Maybe we can do this again sometime. I know that we finally got our paths to connect today, and I appreciate that.
Well, John, thank you, and really appreciate it, and thanks for all your time today.
Thank you. I raise my glass to you guys there at McBrayer. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
See you, brother.
See you, man.